Hi, Merle.
How are you?
Yes. Good. How are you? Good to see you.
Very good, thank you.
Look at this crew. Look at this crew. We want to make sure everybody puts their names in so we can call on people. Gary, you're not. Oh, there he is.
It's the real Gary.
It's the,
I'm wearing my Dodger shirt.
in San Francisco. In San Francisco, I see that.
Hey, baseball starts on the 24th.
You know, I just got an email yesterday from the San Francisco Giants letting me know when opening day was going to be in 2021 to make sure that I renewed my season seats.
2021.
We got that from the Diamondbacks too. We had already renewed our seats, so they have an investment from us.
Well, I've got to
Gary,
come down to the Diamondbacks. Yes.
I saw that, but Buster Posey just opted out for this shortened season.
Oh, I didn't see that yet.
Yeah,
Really?
because he has newborn premature twins that he and his wife adopted, so he wanted to.
You know, I was a premature twin also,
I can tell.
and luckily I've outgrown that.
Glad to hear that.
You knew I was a twin, right, Rabbi, or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Knew you were a twin.
And your brother's
you were
name's
premature.
Barry, something like that, right?
Yeah, unfortunately,
Barry and Gary.
that's how they named us back in the 50s.
Barry and Gary.
Now my
who's older?
nephew's going to have a daughter soon, in about 9 months, 6 months, or whatever. I suggested several names for him. He didn't like Latoya, but I'm working on other names for him.
Gary, who's older?
My brother is.
All right.
And he's never let me forget it either.
Never let you forget it. Well, look at all right. So why don't we, Jody? Are we not going to see you today? Are you doing other things and you don't want us to see you? That's okay. That's okay. But then
I'm baking my challah while I see you.
That's good. Baking challah. Why is that a bad thing?
That's appropriate for Shabbat.
Exactly. Since I take a break from working, I figure out.
Isn't that stuff that's all put in air conditioning? So why would that not be covered?
Uh-oh. Who's dealing with air conditioning? Somebody's dealing.
The guards are.
Thank God ours works.
Oh man. All right. So we should begin. We got stuff because this is a cuckoo portion. This is a cuckoo portion. Jeff, he's going away. Oh, Jeff's leaving. How is it that Jeff's leaving when we're talking about the cuckoo portion? Phyllis, how are you? Good to see you. Everybody's good. Miriam's good.
Thank you, Rabbi. How are you?
I am doing really well. This is good. This is fantastic.
Is it cuckoo or hookah or hookah?
Oh, look at you making the rabbinic jokes over here. No, it's cuckoo. We're going straight cuckoo over here. But why don't we do the blessing? Why don't we do the blessing first for the study of Torah, as we'll do it together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher tzivanu v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. It's time for us to get busy with some Torah. Now, this portion, Pinchas, it's named after, okay. So this portion is named after Moses's grandnephew, Aaron's grandson. Moses's grandnephew, Aaron's grandson. We are introduced to him really at the end of last week. You guys remember last week we were doing Balak, and this is a very interesting thing that's happening right over here. I'm going to catch us up in a second, and then we're going to jump in. But then also in this portion, there are four distinct, interesting parts to discuss. And we're just going to actually jump right in, specifically with Pinchas. Now, let me give you a little background on Pinchas. So here's what's going on at the end of Balak, of the portion Balak. So the Israelites are wandering in the wilderness, And stop me if you're like, Rabbi, we know this, you know, you don't have to give us that much detail. So just catch me up, because I just want to make sure we're all on the same page as we move forward. Let's see, Jeff's putting on his, good, Jeff, you're back. I didn't want, you know, I was so worried. You left. I was worried about you. Okay, so at the end of Balak, so what's going on in Balak? The Israelites are hanging out in the wilderness, and they come upon the Midianite people, right? The Midianite kingdom. Balak is a Midianite king, and Balak's like, what are these people doing over here? We got to get rid of them. I heard about these guys, you know, and they're just going to cause all sorts of trouble. So he wants to curse them, right? So he gets Balaam, this sorcerer, if you will, and he's like, all right, you got to go and you got to curse these people. And he's like, all right, I'll go curse them. And then got on the way, an angel of God stops Balaam and tells him, sorry, you can't curse these people. These are people who are very close to God. You can only bless them. And he's like, oh, well, bless them. What? Okay. So he goes and he sees Balak, and Balak's like, all right, let's go curse these guys. And Balaam says, I can only bless them. He's like, whatever. So he goes up on top of this mountain area and he sees them and he's like, all right, curse them, give them a big curse. And Balaam, what does he say? Does anybody remember what the blessing is that he gives them?
Matovu Wahalacha Yaakov.
Beautiful, Miriam, ding, 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 fabulous. Yes, it is the blessing that we say every morning. Ma tovu alecha Yaakov. You know that one? You guys know that one? Yeah. Ma tovu alecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. How ma tovu olecha? How good are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel? That these are special, blessed people that are very, very close to God. So it's showing this love and connection, which is very fun and interesting. So we think that that's where the story ends, but no, because Balak's like, oh, really? I can't curse them. I can't, you know, fight with them. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to kill them with kindness. We're going to kill them with kindness. And what do I mean by that? So it gets a little dicey in the portion. So what happens is, instead of directly right away fighting with the Israelites, they kind of like, hey, come on over, come hang out with us. And, you know, some hanky-panky starts going on, and the Israelites are like, oh, Midianite culture, pretty good. And people are getting together, you know, doing things they shouldn't be doing, and starting to worship the idols, and women and men and men and women mixing and cavorting, doing all these things. And you know what's happening now. So God is very, very, very angry. Like, I just told these guys that you can only be blessed because you're beloved by me, and now this is what you do. And God gets really like so angry that he wants to destroy the Israelite people. Like, how could you? And brings upon a plague. Okay, so time out. And we're about to get with Pinchas. When is another time, fairly recently, when God was so furious with the Israelite people that God wanted to get rid of them? Does anybody remember?
The golden calf.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, the golden calf. So what happened there? They were like, oh, Moses is gone, golden calf, let's do this. This is going to be great. And God's like, these people, they're my people. I got them out of Egypt, and this is the way they thank me. Let's just get rid of them. Okay, so God wanted to get rid of them then as well. We're going to jump back there in a second. Let's go even further back. No, you know what? We're not going to go further back because it wasn't the Israelite people. It was some other people. We'll go further back in a little bit. Okay, check it out. So what happens? We're back with the Midianites. The Israelites plagued. I mean, I'm going to read to you. Here's a section right here. Here's what happens. just here's the beginning of part of the portion, and this is what happens with Pinchas. Who was Pinchas? Pinchas was Moses's grandnephew, Aaron's grandson, and they said that he was like a zealot. What is a zealot? What is a zealot? Can anybody define for us zealot?
Fanatic,
What's that?
partly fanatic person.
Okay, so like fanatical, like really deep, serious believer with passion like that. Thank you, Miriam. Perfect. Check out what happens, right? So things are not going well. God is super angry, sends this plague. Check out what happens. Just then, one of the Israelites came and brought a Midianite woman over to his companions in the sight of Moses and the whole Israelite community, who were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Okay, so right there in front of everybody, nobody's hiding the fact that the Israelites are mixing with the Midianites and the Israelite men are mixing with the Midianite women. No, it's not a secret, right? Doing this right in front of Moses. And it makes the assumption, here's the text right here. I mean, this is Numbers 25, 6 through 10, makes the assumption that Moses does nothing, right? The sight of Moses' community were weeping at the entrance of the meeting when Pinchas, all right, you ready for this? When Pinchas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, saw this, zealot, he left the assembly. He got up on his own. He was just like, what is going on here, right? And takes a spear in his hand. He followed the Israelite into the chamber and stabbed both of them with the sword, like through both of them, because they were on top of each other. I'm not saying anything about that, but they were on top of each other, spear right through them. Said the Israelite speared the Israelite and the woman through the belly. Then the plague against the Israelites were checked. Those who died of the plague numbered 24,000. So the plague hit, right, because of this mixing. So God's so angry, he's like, I'm gonna get rid of these guys with a plague. And when Pinchas, son of Eleazar, grandson of Aaron, he just sees this cavorting right in front of his face, and he gets up and he stabs them with this sword right through both of them. The plague stops. The plague stops. Because it says, check this out, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, Pinchas. Now this gets a little dicey, and this is what we're going to talk about. The Lord spoke to Moses saying, Pinchas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, the priest, has turned back my wrath from the Israelites by displaying his zealousness for me, so that I did not wipe out the Israelite people in my zealousness, meaning God's zealousness. Say, therefore, I grant him my covenant of peace, my covenant of shalom. It shall be for him and his descendants after him a covenant of priesthood for all time, because he took zealous action for God, thus making expiation for the Israelites. All right. So the Torah's description of Pinchas's action, of Moses's inaction, because he just watched this whole thing happening, the cavorting, and God's reaction raises some very disturbing questions. What are some of the disturbing questions that this whole scenario evokes? What do you think?
First of all, it displays a weakness on the part of Moses, either in his old age, infirmity, or lack of memory, as well as his advisors, that he ignored the law that was well established about intermixing with foreign women. He did not make the decision that this was a sin to be stopped and chose inaction instead of the action necessary.
This is interesting. This is interesting. I think there's a lot of assumptions made there. How do we know that it was inaction? Maybe he was taking his time a little bit. He's like,
that's the difference between zealous action and understanding.
Okay. So it's almost as if I tell you, it's as if by looking at this, does the Torah condone zealousness? Is murder permitted when performed in the service of one's personal sense of God's will? Right? It's like, does the Torah condone murder in the name of zealousness to God's will?
Certainly, this is the only example that we see. And why a Levite priest and heir to the ultimate Kohen Gadol status on his own right could protect God's honor, but not maybe a normal citizen.
Well, so this is really interesting, right? Because for us, this does not fly well in the face of our modern sensibilities, right? Does not fly well in the face of our modern sensibilities. And here's the thing: it didn't fly so well in the face of the rabbis either, like the rabbis from Talmud and from the ones who were writing all the midrashim and such. All the commentary. Yes, thank you, Jeff. All the commentary, and it didn't fly so well for them either. But they kind of took a little bit of a different direction, right? And I think that there's a difference. I think that we both feel the same way, but we're going to come about it a little bit differently. Like, whoa. So just in the interest of time, I'm just gonna run through some of these ideas. So the rabbis of the Jerusalem Talmud, right? We have two sets of Talmud, right? We have the Babylonian and we have the Jerusalem. So the rabbis of the Jerusalem Talmud say that the way that they understand Pinchas's act is as if no one ever before and no one ever since could feel or has felt the same full devotion to God, that anybody else who would do such an act would not do it out of a 100% pure heart, right? So there's always going to be some other motivation behind it, so that they can condone it, because it's like, well, this really was strictly, but nobody else in their right mind, nobody else in their right soul, because all souls are different. Only Pinchas could have been able to do this, nobody else. So he was unique in a way that is impossible for someone else to attain, right? That level of connection. So they're like, nobody else could do this. So any kind of murder in the name of God is not okay for anybody else, because no one in the past, present, and history and future of the Jewish people, Israelite people, will ever have the same kind of connection, right? Nobody. So they're like, okay, it's wrong what he did, but for him, okay, right? Then it goes on. Others talk about how that Pinchas wasn't really doing this for his love and connection to God, but he was sacrificing himself, murdering this guy and the Midianite woman in order to save the Israelite people. Right? He said, because he knew if he did this, the plague would be lifted and the people would be saved. And this covenant of peace that is offered to him is a way of God helping to, it's an inner peace for him, of God giving Pinchas an inner peace, meaning because he murdered, he's going to feel guilty, he's going to feel terrible about this, and he's going to have to make amends, but he's always going to carry this pain in his heart. So I'm going to offer him my covenant of peace, meaning God is going to offer Pinchas the covenant of peace to help it and give peace to his heart for this deed that he did, because he really was sacrificing a piece of himself to save the Israelite people. Okay.
You know, your comment that said he knew that the plague would be lifted would suggest some kind of premeditation, and we can't ascribe that to Pinchas and allow his act to be condoned.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
there has to be no premeditation, or else it is considered an act of violence. And
Yeah, so
warrants-
all right. So this is the difference. This is where, okay, you know, we're just gonna jump here. We're just gonna jump there because we need to for time's sake. This is the difference between maybe a more liberal, small L, progressive, small p, understanding of Torah. We as liberal Jews, understanding of Torah versus the fundamental understanding of Torah by the rabbis. When the rabbis don't agree with something in the Torah, right? When they don't agree with a law, with a proclamation, with an understanding, specifically even here, they can't say God was wrong, that this was wrong. They fundamentally, or that the Torah, it's, you know, if it's divinely inspired and every word is important, they can't say this is wrong. I don't agree with this. They can't do it, right? They fundamentally cannot do that. That is just not who they are. They're just not built that way. It doesn't work. So in order for them to find themselves within the text, they have to figure out a way to play with the text, to interpret the text, to find that understanding, right? To make a justification for what it's actually saying, right? I mean, and it's fascinating. It's beautiful. It's their way of doing exactly what we want to do, what we want to feel about this. Being like, this guy's crazy. I don't understand why God would give him such a peace. It doesn't say anything about his wanting to take care of the you know, to stop the plague and his own self-sacrifice. It doesn't say anywhere. It doesn't say that anywhere there. What this guy did was wrong. What this guy did. So we are able to say that. At least I don't want to speak for, I'm not going to speak for you. I'm not going to speak for you. I'll rephrase. I'm able to say that because of my own belief system. I'm able to say that. The rabbis are not able to say that, but we both feel the same way about the action. Now, okay. Let's go back to the golden calf. When God was like, I'm gonna get rid of these Israelite people. Moses, we just get rid of these guys. We can go find some other people. What does Moses do? Does Moses go and kill all these people? Merle, what were you gonna say?
No,
that he-
go on, because
Oh, Miriam, were you speaking? Miriam,
No,
what
no,
did
I was
Moses
just
do?
going to say that he pleads for the people.
Oh, okay. Yes. He doesn't go and like killing all these people. He's like, whoa, take it easy. He was angry, right? He goes down and he smashes them and he puts all the Israelites basically in a timeout while he goes talks to God again, right? Puts timeout. But what does Moses do? Moses pleads on their behalf, saying, oh, look, come on, right? You want to get rid of them, then you get rid of me too.
The greater part of that is that he makes his plea in a way that it brings out a fallacy or weakness within God about his own ego. God is the greatest PR agent that ever lived, and if that's challenged or misinterpreted in the world by his acts, which is how Moses appeals to God, that's ultimately the worst of human qualities. And it makes
Sorry,
a
Jeff.
big
Continue.
difference.
Yeah. Jody, go.
I was just going to say that it's probably why Moses was deliberating about how to approach it, right? Like the folly of youth of Pinchas, he probably was not even alive during the golden calf period.
Oh, stop
Right?
it. Oh my goodness.
He's
You
a
just brought up another
grandchild.
point.
He's a grandchild, right? So he's probably not even alive.
Oi,
He hasn't seen that there are other approaches. He doesn't know that Moses, you know, sought another path and was successful in another path instead of killing. And here's Moses, I think, saying what's where, just like we tell leadership people in leadership programs, what's worked for you before, apply that technique to this difficult situation. But Pinchas, I would bet, wasn't even alive for what's worked before.
Jody, that is a fabulous bet.
Thank you.
Because check it. Yes, go, Merle. Go. Were you raising your hand?
I think that Moses is trying to come up with a rational way to handle all of this without going out and killing everyone, or like Jody said, dealing with, what kind of a leader can you be? What's your experience been? But Moses is trying to include everyone. And I think that's why Moses is so fed up also, that, he's taking directives, but they aren't the way that he would have done it.
All right. So check this out. Remember in the beginning, I said, Talia, you missed this part. I said there were like 3 big, but really like 4 big themes going on in this portion. And we're really only stuck on this first one. This is a portion where they also do another census. It's the second time that the census is taken. Okay. Because on the paper, it's about, because now we're about to go fight these Midianites. Right? We're going to go fight these Midianites. But there's another commentary that says the reason why we had to take another census is because now, and this speaks directly to Jody's point, nobody's left in Egypt except for 2 people.
Wow.
Joshua and Caleb. What's so special about Joshua and Caleb? Remember, they were 2 of the 12 spies, or the ones who went into the promised land to check it out. When the other 10, what did they say? Oh, that place is terrible. There's giants in there. They're going to squash us like bugs, and please take us back to Egypt. And Joshua and Caleb were like, I don't know, what are these guys? They saw the same thing, and he's like, what? Place was amazing. The place was a land flowing with milk and honey. It was great, right? That's what it is. The land flowing with milk and honey comes from Joshua and Caleb saying that. And so it was because of their perspective that they didn't still have that burden of slavery on their backs, right? The yoke of slavery on their back, even though that those 2 still did, they were the only 2 out of the millions of people who would be able to move forward. So what happened, right? They're wandering in the wilderness for generations. So all of those people can die out, and all the new people entering the promised land, except for those 2 people, were all born in the wilderness. So they knew nothing of that. All they knew was wilderness training. These guys, they're like Mowgli, and right? They're just growing up in the wilderness. So this is a very important point. Go, Jody.
I was just going to say, it just occurred to me too, that Moses has killed before. When he killed the Egyptian, and probably understands what it is to carry somebody's murder more than Pinchas does.
Yeah. Beautiful point. For Pinchas, yeah, you can give her some claps. That's good, Talia. Yeah. Right, for Pinchas, here this guy is just about Jew, if you will, the wilderness, who's hardened by the wilderness, and for them in the wilderness, it's life, death, black, white. It's black or white. There's no sunrise, sunset colors in the middle. There's no gray, this or that. And what else is going on in this portion? What else is going on? We're towards the end when Moses knows that his time is up. Right? We're just about to go into the promised land, and it is time to transition to a new leader. And everybody just sees what Pinchas did. So people are like, "Ooh, yeah, Pinchas. It's an unfortunate name, but he's like, yeah, Pinchas. Let's get this guy to be the new leader. It's gonna be great." And Moses is like, this is not who we need as a new leader, who it's like, it's us and them. If you're either with us or against us, and then everybody else I'm going to wipe out. So the zealousness, he says, is not what the type of leadership that we need for the people. So, but Moses still doesn't know who's going to replace him, who should replace him, right? So Moses, knowing that his death is imminent, right? Hold on, Miriam, let me finish this point, then we'll get to you. Knowing that his death is imminent because he was told. Now, let's go back. What happened? Why was Moses told that he's not going to be leading the people? Because he was quick to anger and he smacked the rock with a stick instead of using his words. It's like we tell our nursery school kids, use your words, right? But I was so angry, even more so, use your words, right? And that's what God was saying to Moses, use your words, don't get into violence. You're going to deal with it, stab you and that's it. But we know that God is wrathful, vengeful like that. So Moses is like, who's going to take over for me? Even though we already know that Joshua's been like his right-hand man, but he still's like, who's going to take over me? And God says, you know who's going to be? It's going to be Joshua, because he has the spirit within him, right? He has the spirit within him. And then in front of everybody, right? They say, you know what? Sorry, it's not going to be Pinchas. It's going to be Joshua. Joshua, let's talk about why him. So what does Moses do? Moses, in front of everybody, and this is still done this is interesting. This is still done today. The words that, let me find them. Okay, these are the words, okay? At God's instruction, Moses proceed. This is it. In front of everybody. Moses is like, all right, the time is now. After what we just saw with Pinchas, the time is now. I got to switch over the leadership before, before people start like, let's get behind this guy, Pinchas. The time is now to switch over the leadership. This is the time. Because I know I'm not going into the promised land. So what does he do? He takes Joshua in front of the entire community, right? And places his hands like this on Joshua's head, right? And says, let the eternal God of the spirits of all flesh appoint someone over the community who shall go out before them and come in before them, and who shall take them out and bring them in, so that God's community may not be like sheep that have no shepherd, right? This person who's always going to lead them out, lead them in, always be there. He puts his hands on his head. This is the same thing that is said today in the Reform movement at the ordination of our rabbis, right? This is the statement that is said to us, right, publicly, where the head of our yeshiva, right, puts his hands on, at this time it's he, hands on our heads, right? And he says these words. I personally don't remember him saying this because I don't remember anything that happened at that point, because I was all like this, what's happening? This is crazy, right? But, going back to the video, I know that this is what he said. But it's this public laying of the hands. It's like the passing of the tradition. Now let's talk about Joshua. Why Joshua? Why Joshua? What do you think? Let's throw out some ideas. Knowing what you know about Joshua. Go, Talia.
Because he challenged limitations.
How so?
Because when he was going in as a spy, he didn't just go with the majority view and second guess his own view, and he was able to stick to his own view even though it wasn't the majority view.
Fabulous. Okay, good. Nice. I love that. Beautiful. What else? You know what, Miriam, I'm sorry I cut you off before. And
it's okay. No, I love to hear what Talia says all the time.
Miriam, did you have something?
No,
Why Joshua?
Before we went into Yehoshua, I wanted to thank you for my attendance here. This is a very important morning to me. I am thrilled to hear what you had to say. I'm beyond happy. I'm thrilled. First of all, I always love to learn. But it makes me think for the first time, and since I'm reading the Bible actually, of the multi-dimensioned Moses. I always thought Moses, Ish Anav, nobody was as humble as Moses ever. The Bible actually sort of says that. Then Jody helped me because she reminded me of a young Moses who killed the Egyptian taskmaster on the spot. Maybe we should learn to talk first before we do any violence. That is what we're teaching our children. But Moses saw the act. He saw him smite the poor Jewish slave, and he acted instinctively and on the moment. And we don't discuss it. We don't say, well, he should have talked first, or he should have reasoned with the taskmaster. There was no reasoning. He just killed him. Then we see Moses pleads for the people almost the 40 full years that they're in the land. And he pleads for them constantly. God is always angry. Moses is always pleading not to be so angry. Then we see a very strange Moses, just 2 parshas ago. In Chukat, when God says, take the rod that I give you, it's interesting that God gave him the staff, and speak to the rock, and water will come forth. Moses does not listen to God. Maybe the first time in his life. That's why we wonder, was his punishment too severe for his first mistake in all of history? And the rabbis to this day are arguing maybe his punishment was too severe. But Moses hits the rock, resorting to what we call violence, not once, but twice. And then the water comes. Then we have Pinchas, cannot reason with them to stop screwing around with the Midianites, because here 2 people were fornicating in front of his face, and what he did is react very intuitively, very zealously, and takes a knife and goes through the both of them at one time. Should he have reasoned with them? How could he? They were in the middle of having sex with each other. He was not about to reason. So what the Bible shows me personally is the saying something, kind of contradicting it, saying it again giving us a conflict, which I love. And the conflict does not have to be resolved for me. I simply am enjoying the conflict.
Beautiful. Thank you, Miriam. All right, check this out. I want to say something in there too. Hold on. I'm going to throw a little wrinkle in there, something else for you to think about, Miriam.
Good.
I believe, and this, I guess I'll have to talk about this another time, but I don't know if I'm going to be on that specific Torah portion. But I believe that it was not a punishment that God told Moses he's not going in, but rather a blessing and saving him from what would be coming next. And it was almost like God was tricking Moses, because what did God say to Moses? Speak to the rock. Here's the staff, but speak to the rock. And it's almost like, I'm going to trick you. Why? Because the first time, if you remember, the first time he gets water out of the rock, another time, parshiot before, how's he supposed to get the water out? God says to Moses, hit the rock. Hit that rock. So maybe in all of Moses is like, he's getting all these mixed messages. The people are whining and complaining, and maybe he just reverts back to the original instruction of hitting the rock. And now God's like, oh, you didn't listen. I tricked you, but I'm not going to tell you that. But I'm going to let you, right? Because what happens? God, and it actually comes in this portion also, God tells Moses, okay, you're not going in, but you get to go up to the top of this mountain and gaze upon the promised land in all of its entirety. right? You get to go, you get to gaze upon it. It's as if he gets to see the promised land from above. It's like when we are flying over the United States, we get to see it in its glory, and it's so beautiful, right? But there's no nitty gritty. When you get down to the ground, you don't see pain and poverty and gross and destruction and anger and violence. You don't see that from way up above, right? You don't see any of that. You're completely distant from that. It's just this beautiful kind of overlook. And I mean, I'm totally jumping ahead of myself right here. But I believe, to be able for Moses to see Israel from above, this beautiful, beautiful place, really a land flowing with milk and honey, God is saving him from dealing with what happens. Like, yay, we made it to the promised land. This is great. Moses is like, this is going to be amazing. What's the first thing that happens? We know that I'm not giving anything away, I don't think. We all know that Joshua is the one who takes him over, who becomes the new leader. I think I just said that. Did I say that? And Joshua is the one who leads them in. First thing first, they go in there. What happened? Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, right? They go to war right away. So you think, yay, we made it to the promised land. Everything's great. Story's over. No, violence and fighting and war and gross. It's like, Moses, how do you think Moses would have felt? I just spent my entire existence bringing these people to the promised land, and this is the reward, is of violence and ugliness? But rather, here's my reward. I get to see it in its entirety, and it's beautiful, and I get to watch the people walk in before I die. So, I mean, that's a side note. That's a side note. Jeff, are you going to take us on this side note too?
I'm just going to augment what you just said about Moses.
Okay, augment, and then we got to keep going because we got some very important people.
What does Moses do at the top of the mountain? He gives 113 prayers to God in asking him to be allowed to enter the land, and God says no each time. Yeah. And the value of that is that we recognize that as a punishment in our smallness, but it's really the greatest reward God could have given his faithful servant Moses, was to take him to heaven with him, so to speak. His death is his entrance and ascendance to be closer to God as a reward. We That's don't beautiful. Look at his not being entered the land as a punishment. We should look at his death as the opportunity for him to finally ascend to the value that he created for God, and it needs to be looked on as a reward, not as a punishment.
Beautiful. Okay, we're going to move on. We're going to move on. You ready for this? Now we're going to jump into some other part in here. So Joshua is now the leader of the people, right? And he's like hanging out with Moses, and people are witnessing Moses's interaction with Joshua. Joshua knew Egypt, yet he was also able to overcome that burden on his shoulders, right? Joshua knew Egypt, yet he was able to overcome that burden, right? So there was something special and unique about him. And that is also one of the reasons why he was chosen, because he knew the wilderness. He knew what it's like to live in the wilderness, but he also knew what it was like back in Egypt. So he had that evolved perspective that definitely Pinchas didn't have, right? He had that evolved perspective. Now we're going to move to something else that's interesting, because we're talking about using our words and speaking up and having the conversation. We are introduced here. Did any of you watch the Hamilton that was just on and all that? Yeah, we watched it, right? So we have, what happens? We got these in the beginning. We've got the Schuyler sisters, right? Schuyler sisters, right? And Eliza, wait, no. Which is the oldest one? Angelica. Right, she's like, my father had no son, so I'm the one who has the social climb for one, right? Remember that part? So here we're introduced to basically the Torah's first version of the Schuyler sisters. And it's the daughters of this dude named Zelophehad. Okay, Zelophehad. Now Zelophehad, he had no sons. So the oldest daughter, he had 5 daughters. Zelophehad had 5 daughters. The oldest daughter, Mahlah, right? She's the one who had to social climb for one, but didn't have that where she got married, right? So what happens? When the father dies, his portioned land, what's going to be given once we make it to the promised land, right, goes to others in his family, and the daughters have nothing because it's only supposed to be passed down from fathers to sons, right? Only supposed to be passed down from fathers to sons. And now these daughters, the 5 daughters, say, whoa, 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 whoa. Right? When I see God and Moses, I'm going to tell him to include women in the sequel work, right? Instead of, they stand up and they say, hold on a second. Our father didn't have no sons, but now that's not our fault. He died natural causes in the wilderness. So why should we be left without anything? Right? And here's what happened. Now this is very interesting. It's not that Mahlah, the oldest, goes and speaks on behalf of all of them, but all 5 go in front of Moses and plead their case, saying, this is not right. What about us? Why shouldn't we be able to inherit the land? Just because this is the way it's always been done, right? This is the way it's always been done, doesn't apply to now. And that is very interesting here. Like we talk about standing up and using your words, right? And here's the part I really like about this. First, it takes a lot of strength, right? Especially to stand up and use your words against, like, who shared this? I think Talia, you said this, where Aaron said, Aaron spoke up and he didn't just go with the majority and say, okay, that's how it is. Right? The daughters spoke up and they didn't just go with the majority. They said, things have to change. With Aaron standing up and saying something, did things actually change for the people? Well, yes, kind of, but not necessarily in the positive. They didn't go back to Egypt the way that they had wanted, but they ended up having to go into the wilderness. They didn't get to go into the promised land. So even though he spoke up, didn't actually change, right? But here's the thing. At least, and this is at the very least, and this is for all of us, this is at the very least, at least he gave himself the opportunity that maybe something would change, right? If you don't speak up, for sure nothing's going to change. But if you do, it's not guaranteeing that change will happen, but it's giving you the opportunity for change to happen, right? It's very possible that Moses and God would have said, sorry, daughters of Zelophehad, it's not going to happen. But there was that chance, that opportunity. Go, Talia, go.
So there's this amazing book, The Power of Habit, and it talks about Rosa Parks and how it wasn't just her voice that changed things. It was all of her connections in her community. So she spoke up, she still got arrested. It still wasn't, it was all of the people that she knew that cared about her, that wanted to jump on board. And this was like the perfect catapult to use to make change happen. So it was community and all those ties within a community, because she bridged gaps between not just prominent Black leaders, but also prominent white people in society, because she had friends. And that's what made change happen. But someone had to take the first step and take the first step.
Yeah, that's interesting. It reminds me of, like, even in classes and in schools, you're going, it's like, don't be afraid to ask the question, because if you have the question, I'm sure others have the question too. They may just not be strong enough or confident enough to ask the question, right? So you know that you're not alone. So the daughters, they're like, you're exactly right. They were totally supported by so many in their community because they thought, well, it could be us, right? It could be us. And you know what's really interesting? That just reminded me of something. It's kind of a tangent, but it's not really a tangent. This idea of speaking up and giving yourself the opportunity, right? I use this in discussing prayer, especially at camp or with kids. And here's what I mean by that. It's like kids are like, well, why do we have to pray? You know, why do we have to come to the sanctuary? Why do we have to come to the chapel? Can I talk to God anywhere? Can I do? I was like, yeah, you can. Like technically you can, but do you? No, right? But when we give you the opportunity, then you actually take the opportunity to talk to God. What does it always mean that you're going to connect? Like I say, does it mean when we do tefillah every day at camp, does it mean that I always feel something? No. Do I feel something, you know, sometimes? Is it rare? I mean, yes, but it happens. Why? Because I gave myself the opportunity. If you don't give yourself the opportunity, it's almost guaranteeing it's not going to happen, right? But if you give yourself the opportunity and you stand up, if you give yourself the chance to pray, if you open your up and stand up for something that you believe in, right? You are at least giving yourself the opportunity at the very minimum. And more often than not, it leads to better things, right? So I think, you know, with the daughters of Zelophehad, this idea of standing up and saying the way things have always been done doesn't work anymore is a wonderful example even for us today, right? Even for us today, to stand up and say, you know what, the way that things have always been done doesn't work anymore, right? Yochanan ben Zakkai, does that name sound familiar to anybody? All right, so Yochanan ben Zakkai, and he's classic, when the second temple was destroyed, all right, here's the thing. That was the way Judaism was sacrifice. It was rabbinic Judaism, or temple, not rabbinic, sorry. Temple Judaism was sacrifices, pilgrimage. This is the way that you practice Judaism. Temple is destroyed, you have a choice. Well, this is the way it's always been done, so if we can't do it anymore, over. Or you could say, you know what? Saying this is the way it's always going to be done, we got to do it differently if we want to survive, if we want to change, if we want to grow. Yochanan ben Zakkai said, you know, give me Yavne. All right, I know that I'm not going to be able to do anything here. So let me go over to this little area called Yavne. I'm going to bring these guys with me and we're going to start changing Judaism, right? We're going to do that. I think about it even in terms of this. Well, Torah study, the way it's always been done is we do it at the temple and that's it. Torah study, the way it's been done, the way it's always been done is at the temple and that's it. So if we say that that's always going to be done, we wouldn't be here on the Zoom right now. But it takes some people saying, hey, wait a second. No, you know what? Let's do something a little bit differently. Let's try something new. Let's experiment. Does it mean it was going to work? No. But if we didn't try, we're guaranteeing it's not going to work. But what we do try, and we're trying these new things, right? We try these, what we find is that it's actually working pretty cool. That we're able to, I mean, look, Merle's in Arizona. You know, Merle's hanging out in Arizona. Yet, anything that the temple is offering, you can guarantee that Merle's going to be on it. She even comes to these, the camp schmooze that we do where the directors Free Choice Live and we talk for a half an hour about things that are coming on. Merle's the old. If we always just wanted to do things the way it was done before, nothing. We just finished our first session of virtual camp where we had 3rd through 7th grade kids. If we said, camp, it only has to be here a person, it wouldn't happen. Were we worried that it wasn't going to succeed? Yes. Of course. But if we didn't give ourselves the opportunity. Yes, Merle.
You know, everybody, I was going to say about the camp thing. I sent you that picture of Gabby during Hug Katan.
Yeah.
And my granddaughter. And I couldn't
tell everybody the picture. What was the picture?
Of her sitting at our house, and it was Hug Katan. I could not
small
get
activity.
her last week. I could not get her attention for anything in the world. She was so glued in to camp. And the fact that, you know, you made all these changes so that camp could happen is a sign that we can survive all of this.
Mm-hmm. That's right. The daughters
And
of
all of this
Zelophehad,
stuff
yeah.
too.
Yeah. The
You're-
daughters of Zelophehad made changes so that the women moving forward would be able to inherit land, right? So it wouldn't just be lost. But they stood up and they said, this is wrong, right? This is wrong. So, you know, this is kind of interesting. This is a little side note. So check it out. So Moses, right? There's this really interesting commentary, this midrash, that says Moses actually tried to take advantage of this situation, right? They're like, whoa, look, yeah, you see, God is not so angry with us. God will change God's understanding. See, look, now God's saying that the daughters can receive land. So let's not get so upset with God and love so much about Pinchas. Look, you see, God, he's also God is also so you know, benevolent in there. Like, you think Pinchas would have said yes to the daughters of Zelophehad? No way. That was one of theirs. Like, midrash that said that's how Moses also tried to sway the people to move away from their support of Pinchas by pairing with God to give the daughters this opportunity to inherit. And then he was like, all right, I'm gonna take some more advantage of this, because if we said that yes, we can transfer the land to the daughters, I think it would be a good idea, God, if we transferred leadership to my sons rather than Joshua. Yeah, one more time tried to around there. And God said in the Midrash, you know, your sons are great, but Joshua, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, your Joshua is going to be a better fit for leadership. Leadership is not guaranteed by blood, but rather by merit. Right? Leadership is guaranteed not by blood, but by merit. Right? So this is also where we see this evolution of passing on leadership in the Jewish tradition through the merit of one's study and all those kind of things. I mean, there's still that fight, that internal fight of wanting to pass on to your own children, but when it comes down to it, it's about your merit rather than your lineage. Anyway, does anybody have any final thoughts? Because I see that we're already just about out of time, but this was fantastic. And I actually managed to hit 3 of the 4 things that I really wanted to talk about today. So I'm pretty impressed with myself.
Are you giving Moses credit? Are you giving Moses the credit for the change in the status of women inheritance? He couldn't make the decision. He appealed to God to make that decision.
No, of course. I'm saying that in the Midrash, it's like Moses was trying to use this to his advantage, right? He clearly couldn't give the decision, but Moses was trying to use this to his advantage to A, bring the people away from Pinchas, B, maybe I can hook up my sons up in here, and because he knew he wasn't going to be going, but at the end of the day, none of that happened. Hey, somebody's got mail. Who still has AOL?
Me.
Unbelievable. Merle, you and my mother. That's
oh, good. I'm glad I'm not alone.
Yes,
you're in good company.
It's the 2 of you.
I was going to say that leadership, yes, leadership is not given by blood, but we hope that we pass down the abilities for our children to achieve by merit.
Amen. Yes, that's beautiful. That's a wonderful
it.
way to end, Merle. Thank you so much. So anyway, with that, I just want to offer everyone a Shabbat Shalom. This was so much fun. Wonderful to see all of you.
To you.
And to be continued. To be continued, everybody. Well done. Shabbat Shalom.